Hello, Simon. How are you?
Hi, Glenn. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay, I want to start with because I'm reading the book and a lot of this, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you're not a religious guy. I am a religious guy, and but there's a lot of this. It's just different language. This is all Bible teaching. Be good, be decent, don't steal, don't cheat, treat people with respect, serve them, don't be their master. This is really the same. This is what you're teaching here, isn't it?
Without a doubt. There's a code that comes with being human, and that code is about being good to other humans. And I found another language to present that message.
Right.
For those that learn that code through religion or another means, that's fine.
Amen. Perfect.
A new message.
Tell me the story about the Titanic. I find this interesting because I know a lot of people on Wall Street and everything else, and they'll tell you every time, our job is not to change the world, our job is not to be whatever, it's to create this widget. But you tell a story in the book about the Titanic that proves the point. It works to your advantage.
Well, the question is, sort of what morality do we have to apply to our decision making? And sometimes the law doesn't go far enough. And this is sort of the mantra on Wall Street, which is we didn't break any laws, we were following the law. And that's all true, as were the owners of the Titanic. At the day the Titanic was built, the largest ships of the day were ferries, and so all of the regulations around the safety of ferries of ships was based on ferries. So the Titanic, when it was built, was 4 times larger than the largest ferry of the day, and so they put the maximum number of lifeboats aboard as the regulation stipulated, which was only a quarter of the number. It could, only enough for the quarter of the number of the passengers. And we know what happened, and the Titanic hit an iceberg, and guess what? 75% of the passengers died and 25% were saved simply because the owners chose to follow the law than do what was right. So same idea. Okay,
so now you would think that people would get this with a tragedy, but let me take you to another example you use in the book, Citibank. Citibank is having, it has a horrible culture in it, and they hit 2008. Tell me before and after 2008.
Well, what's fascinating about Citibank and many of the other large banks, which is they see people as the means to their solution. In other words, what makes these organizations what I would consider culturally weak, in other words, built for the short term but not built to last, is that people are a disposable resource. In other words, when they hit hard times, they use people to balance the books, and they would never sacrifice the numbers to save the people. So think about that for a second. Think about what that does to the organization as a whole. You tell somebody, listen, I need to send you home to tell your spouse and your children that you no longer have an income because we believe in this concept of mass layoffs because we have to balance the books this year. Now, forget about the people who lost their jobs. Think about the people who kept their jobs. Think about the environment that creates, that every single person comes to work every single day knowing that they're disposable if the company doesn't make its numbers. And what that does to us biologically, it actually makes us paranoid, cynical, mistrustful, and self-interested. And this is what you start to see in a lot of these organizations, where self-interest trumps altruism or just service in almost every case.
So are you saying that, like, if you have a business and it's struggling, and there are so many people that I know that have small businesses that are doing their best because everybody is like family, but they have to lay people off because they're just, are you saying there's no situation where you let people go, you just all go down with the ship?
Prior to the 1980s, there was no such thing as mass layoffs as a first means of balancing the books. Of course we look to layoffs. Of course we look to layoffs if it's the difference between life and death. The problem is, in our modern day and age, it's become the first thing we look at when we're not going to make our numbers, and that's the problem.
Isn't that a problem with the stock market? Because, I mean, if you really think about, our whole system is geared to think that we're fine. Economically, we're fine because the stock market's going up. The stock market is totally unhinged and not reflecting reality at all. But we think that that's good. And so our whole society is geared around make the numbers, make the quarter, And so what else do you do?
Well, this is the importance of having
vision.
vision. This is the importance of having vision in the world, which is when we know what we're building towards, we understand that every single sort of quarter or year is purpose built. It's in pursuit of, in service to this higher purpose or higher calling or this greater vision that we have. Absent of vision, the only thing that we can see are the quarterly or the annual numbers. So we work towards the thing we can see. Human beings are very visual animals. I mean, if you think about it, you hear a bump in the night. You have to go look for what you think you heard before you can relax and go back to bed. It's exactly the same thing.
When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about how we get back on the rails, and if it does indeed really just come back to your first book. It starts with why. When we come back. Simon, I want to talk to you a little bit about the why, because even at tense moments, I think, in my own family or even here, people will say to me, Glenn, we can't save the whole world. We're not in this to save the world. But I am. And I believe that people need to be warned, but I also believe that it can be better than this. We don't have to be like this. And so that's what my why is. But is there, what should your expectation be if it is to really change the world? Why is that better than somebody who would say to you, to create this widget and make $1 bazillion?
Money is always a result. And the fact of the matter is, as human beings, we want to feel like we belong to something bigger than ourselves. And what we find is that the greatest leaders are actually the best followers, because as leaders, they see themselves in service to a purpose or a cause or a belief larger than themselves. And so all of their behaviors and all of their decisions are guided by this cause that they're on, this pursuit, this journey. And so starting with why is an essential component of leadership, because it's the reason we would show up in the first place.
Right.
But then what? But then what? Now you have this message and you've attracted all the people, and then what? And so my own work is sort of semi-autobiographical. It's my own journey, which is, as people were attracted to this message of why, the question is, well, now what do I do? How do I create trust, and how do I create cooperation so that we can advance this cause that we believe in of this better world? And then I took a lot of my cues from people in the military who truly come together to serve a cause greater than themselves. And you see levels of trust and cooperation that, unfortunately, in the private sector are rare. You know, these are people who are willing to give their lives to save people that sometimes they don't even like.
Right.
We don't even like to give up credit for things, you know?
Right. So how do you create the cooperation, especially in even a family that is just trying to get everybody to put the cell phones down, get everybody just to relate to each other? Everything in our society, whether it is personal or in business, it is all being swept the other way.
It's a complicating factor. It's a huge complication, which is, as human beings, we are at our best with others. We work brilliantly well together. And so when you start to see things that happen that bring us together, we're great. The problem is we live in a world in which we're more and more physically disconnected. We talk on texting rather than over the phone. We'd rather send an email than get up and walk 30 feet and talk to somebody. I know a company, it's a startup in Los Angeles. There's 5 people who work at this company, and they have an office. They all work in the same space. I kid you not. They send emails to each other all day. Wait, it gets better. And have Skype calls with each other. Like literally a Skype call with that guy, you know? And it sort of makes you wonder, sort of, how do you build trust and cooperation when you have no interaction with the people you're supposed to be working with? So you're absolutely right. Cell phones and sort of social media are an absolute problem when it comes to sort of just being human.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here. I am probably closer to some people because of email, because I'll get up in the middle of the night and I'll be thinking about them, and I'll end up writing 3 pages to them, which I probably would have said, I don't have time to call them or whatever. So there is another side to that.
I don't think technology is a bad thing. You know, alcohol is not a bad thing. Alcohol in excess is a bad thing.
Right.
You know, gambling's not a bad thing. Gambling in excess is a bad thing.
Right.
All of these conveniences that we have in our modern world, of course, are fantastic for reinforcing pre-existing relationships, letting family members who are far away connect with us. Absolutely wonderful. But it's when the balance starts to tip. It's when we overuse these things and start to rely on them even more. I mean, think about it. If I were to come to your house for dinner and the next day I want to send you a note, tell you what a wonderful host you are, what a lovely meal I had, I could dash off a quick email and tell you what a great time I had. Or 3 days later, you receive a handwritten note from me with the exact same words in it. Which one makes you feel better?
The one, the
handwritten note, of course. Right. Same words, same intention. My gratitude is the same. But email is so easy and we can dash it off so quickly that it doesn't feel the same. So when we know that a human being is willing to give their time and energy to us, we actually feel it. And it's these qualities that start to build trust.
So do you think that there's a possibility, because I think the world is headed towards someplace much more authentic. It's either headed towards totalitarianism because we just cave on ourselves, or back to something much more authentic. What you're betting on?
It's going to go one of two ways, right? If we continue down this path, it's sort of like the excesses of the 80s and 90s or the dot-com bubble, which is if we don't intervene, it will crash.
Yeah.
That was the problem. Nobody intervened and it crashed. And so it's like a 12-step program. The first step is admitting we have a problem.
Well,
if we don't intervene, it will crash.
Okay.
But I'm like you. If we spread this message, I'm hoping that we will intervene and people will start to do the right thing.
I know it will. The book from Simon is Leaders Eat Last. Highly recommended.